I welcome everyone, and I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving and doesn't have too many leftovers to worry about. And I will start with a land acknowledgement. And at a recent gathering, a Cree author and playwright, Clayton Thomas Mueller, described land acknowledgements as valuable, as they were similar to a gateway drug. They can be a start on the journey to reconciliation. So use them that way and find out more about reconciliation. Now in Manitoba, there's 63 nations that signed six different treaties starting 154 years ago. There's still much work needed for Canada to honor these treaties. 10 years ago, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee released their report. Many of its 94 calls for action have been worked on, but only 12 have been completed. We need to keep pushing for faster actions on these calls. Where I live in Winnipeg, we are located on Treaty 1 territory and on the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and in the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation. We also must take time to acknowledge Treaty 3 territory in neighboring Ontario, where Shoal Lake lies. That supplies Winnipeg's precious sacred water. We acknowledge our responsibility to these peoples and a responsibility to adhere to their many teachings, particularly those that protect our precious land. We offer our respect and gratitude to the traditional caretakers of this land, for we are all treaty people. And now I'd like to turn it over to Louise to introduce our guest.
Thanks, Pat. Hi, everybody. Tonight we're going to start our session with a conversation about the international climate negotiations. And I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes before I introduce the wonderful Carolyn Burette from Climate Action Network. Just a quick little history of international negotiations in case this is not something you're familiar with and you haven't been exposed to that process. The first airplane I was ever on was my flight to Rio de Janeiro to the UN Earth Summit, where the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was negotiated. And from there, we've been in a process of negotiations since 1992, including after the convention was ratified by enough countries, where we started the Conference of the Parties meetings. And when we talk about Conference of the Parties, or COP, and we say COP 30, we're actually talking about the fact that, yes, we've been doing it for 30 years. And so COP 30 is the annual meeting of governments. It moves around the world. This year it's in Brazil. And the negotiators and ambassadors and government officials meet on the half year every year in Bonn in June, where they start their preparations or try to advance preparations so that we make good progress at our meetings. And of course, you may have heard of, the big milestone meetings like the Paris Agreement in 2015. That was certainly a milestone meeting where we came to an agreement on our approach to setting targets and making progress. Not every meeting is what I would call a milestone meeting, but I do think this particular meeting in Brazil is an important one for Canada. Prime Minister Carney apparently will be attending. So far, I'm not really sure he's done all we would have hoped from him in terms of climate change. We expect a climate competitiveness strategy to be released this month. And we expect him to speak to that, of course, in Brazil. And so one of the reasons we really wanted Caro to be here tonight was to talk to us about COP30 and some of the expectations that she has in terms of the work that Climate Action Network Canada does, along with all the Climate Action Network groups internationally, but in particular to talk about how we might put pressure on Canada, as many of us won't be attending. We'll be here at the home team doing what we can. So why don't I hand it over to you, Caro, and let you share your thoughts on where you'd like to see us go and how we might assist.
Thanks so much, Louise, for that intro. Folks, I'm joining from unceded Kanien'kehá:ka territory in what is colonially known as Montreal. I am really glad to be here with you tonight. I also just want to name that I'm recovering from a concussion and definitely don't have my full brain power. So apologies in advance for that. I wanted to talk a little bit about COP30 and why this is an important COP for Canada. So COP30 is, as the name says, the 30th COP after the first one, which is the one Louise told us about in her intro remarks. And it happens at a very fraught moment geopolitically. The US just left the Paris Agreement again. It is a moment where many countries, including Canada, are backtracking on climate action. So there's really a feeling, I think, after those initial first years of the Paris Agreement, where we saw a flurry of policies implementing the Paris Agreement at home. Now many countries are moving back. And so it's a place where multilateralism is in crisis. And I think where many, rightfully so, including I would say, Louise, we've had a couple discussions about this in the past, have been questioning the value of COPs, where tens of thousands of people converge every year, often taking the plane to go there. And so, what's the point of those negotiations? So truly, I think the process itself is being questioned more than ever. And in parallel with that geopolitical stress, we are seeing what at home our own government, coming from a man who has made a career of speaking on climate action, just moving backwards. And so COP will be super important, not only in terms of maintaining the integrity of the process, but also shining a spotlight on Canada specifically. We're coming from COP29, a COP on finance issues that ended with a disastrous deal where countries in the north I'm sorry, I'm looking for a word in English. Didn't fulfill their obligation in terms of contributing the climate finance that was promised through the Paris Agreement. And so countries, we saw it in Bonn this summer, are really feeling on the back foot, especially countries in the global south who need this finance to implement climate plans and climate policies. So that adds to this questioning around, the process and the pressure that we'll be feeling in Brazil. So obviously this question of finance will be key. After this discussion in Baku on the next climate finance deal, parties agreed that they would develop a roadmap to $1.3 trillion, which is basically the amount of finance that is due to the South. to implement climate action. And so parties will be showing up with that expectation to, see where is the money that was promised, and will this document just be a kind of flimsy piece of paper? So that's one thing on finance. The second piece is the ambition gap. We're already seeing the impacts. We're not, so when the goal of 1.5, limiting climate change to 1.5 degrees was set, this is a long-term goal. It's not just like, we're meeting it on average for a year. And so when this year we started seeing average heating of 1.5 degrees, the 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 question of whether we've reached the target came up. We're not there yet, but I think we are already seeing devastating and heartbreaking climate impacts at this level of warming. And so the question becomes, what are we going to do to make sure that we limit the worst, and whether we have kind of crossed this threshold of irreversible damage. And that's a very valid question, but we still need to put efforts into mitigation. But the reality is, when you add up all the efforts from countries across the world, we're not getting there yet. The new NDC synthesis report will be published at the end of the month, and it's going to show us that countries' existing climate plans for 2030 and 2035 are not getting us there. So that will be the second big question that the LEM tries to address, the ambition gap, so to speak. And then finally, the third piece, and a really important one, is on, it's not the final one. I'm going to name four. The third piece is on adaptation, which has often seen less attention. Countries have been negotiating a global goal, and with this question of finance bubbling up from the global south, the question of adaptation finance becomes really key. And so that will be one of the big pieces that we might see a success around in Brazil, and global north countries coming in with new commitments on that. And then finally, on just transition, is where we would like to see a new global mechanism helping countries cooperate with each other on this issue, which often takes place a little bit more domestically. But we're seeing right now that there are a lot of barriers to countries doing their own just transition, or transitioning at all, without speaking of doing it in a just way that centers people, workers, and communities. There are barriers like trade rules, like debt for countries in the global south in particular, investment, etc. And so that becomes really important to tackle, and we're hoping to see a new global mechanism for just transition adopted at COP30. So I'll stop there in terms of the international goals. We all know that our Prime Minister has a long career of working at the intersection of climate and finance. So far he's confirmed his presence at COP, and so this will be a really key moment if he follows through, because I'm feeling like he might cancel at the last minute. But so far what we've seen from him, and I just want to say, I usually have slides. I couldn't prepare them because screens hurt my eyes. And I'm just really grateful for your patience with me right now. So he did a couple of things since he came in office. Canceled the consumer-facing carbon price. He paused the mandate on zero emissions vehicles. He's been shedding a lot of uncertainty on whether we would meet our 2030 targets, whether we are still committed to our 2035 targets, as well as to the oil and gas emissions cap. He's floated this mysterious climate competitiveness strategy as well, which who knows what will be in there, but I think we have to kind of limit our expectations in terms of whether it will, be a fully fledged climate plan. And so, this is a moment where I think we can say that this prime minister is a little bit overconfident on climate, and COP is a little bit like a pressure cooker. It has a lot of media with a lot of people focused on climate in one same space for all its flaws. And that's always, a key time in the year when we get a lot of pressure. And so it's crucial that we use this strategically to put pressure on Prime Minister Carney. So yeah, maybe I'll stop here. Our asks for Canada are going to be to really kind of choose a path between oil and gas and renewable energy for Canada to commit to its next international climate finance contribution and for Canada to support a global mechanism on just transition. We are going to flesh this out in our COP briefing, which is set to be ready at the end of the month. You all are ahead of us. And yeah, I'm excited to continue the discussion and really excited to be here. SCAN has been a very active member, and I think you're all very cool.
Thank you. Pat, do you mind if I just help on a couple of little bits? Just responding to Ann Pohl's question, the announcement around a climate competitiveness strategy has been something the Prime Minister has talked about, as well as the Environment Minister, for weeks now. It's been well covered in the media. The Globe and Mail had a very detailed article today with Adam Radwanski about what we can expect in that deal. If you have, I can go find it for you, but if you don't have access to the Globe, it won't be as much help. But the other element to remember, if folks are watching that particular side of things, is that what the Prime Minister is doing is implementing the Liberal platform. And the Liberal platform had a lot of detail about the climate competitiveness strategy, which is becoming an industrial competitiveness strategy. So I'll pop those in. But just to open the questions and pass it back to Pat before she goes to questions, I just wondered, Caro, if when we get into the conversation, I'd love your perspective on whether you think my instinct or our instinct that the Prime Minister is vulnerable in an international setting because he sells himself as Mr. International. And that's his comfort zone. That's his people, if you will. And the possibility of putting pressure on him in that environment. I'm just wondering if you could share what you think might be, how that might be effective or not. And then I'll pass it back to you, Pat. Sorry about that.
No, no problem.
No, thanks, Louise. That's an important question. Definitely, this is a prime minister that, and I have my glasses. This is just to for the screen. This is a prime minister that has a track record of working with the UN Secretary General as his climate finance envoy. As you all know, very fluid within finance circles. And I think, like many prime ministers before him, because of our position in the world, Canada is very sensitive to the looks of other countries and other international actors on us. I think it's safe to say that, well, it's not safe to say, but my hypothesis is that the Prime Minister currently doesn't see the environmental movement as a key constituency of his, right? When for Trudeau, he wanted to have the validation of environmentalists. That was key, but it's not the case for Carney. But I think that the eyes of the international scene is definitely something that he will be more sensitive to, and that so far has kind of really positioned him as this, this kind of resistant to Trump and, smooth operator when he goes to the Oval Office. So that's what we have to kind of tackle and show that, actually in the international space on climate, this confidence is we're seeing through it kind of thing.
Okay. I guess the question is how we on the national level kind of push that from Canada's point. Yeah. Dave, you have a question.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks for your comments and thanks for joining us. I have a speculative question, just to get your reaction in a way that without the US presence now is there an opening for a different global accord? Is this kind of Lula's moment and the EU stepping into the breach, or is it just more of the same?
Maybe we can take the 3 questions and I can respond. Thanks for that, David.
Okay. No, I don't know how to say your name. Lisha? You're on mute.
Letitia.
Sorry, Lydia.
No, it wasn't Letitia. I know how to say your name.
Yeah, my name is Lydia.
Oh, Lydia. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know there's a J there, but
Just threw me for a loop. That's all. Go ahead, please, with your
I
question.
had a question for Caroline. Merci pour la présentation, Caroline. But my question has to do with who usually attends, besides politicians and media, the COP meetings? And in terms of Canada, who are the attendees?
Okay, maybe I'm just seeing more hands, so maybe I'll take 2 questions and then I'll take the next 2 ones.
Okay, how about you deal with those 2?
So I don't think we're gonna see another like treaty or agreement, David. I think again, like we had the deal that is the Paris Agreement, and now the US stepped out. I don't think there's any interest in kind of redesigning a new, completely multilateral accord. I think the question is whether those of us who remain, which means everyone except the US, are still committed to implementing the current one. And what does that look like in this moment of geopolitical fracture? Yeah. So I think there is definitely enthusiasm from Lula, but he remains quite close to oil and gas interests. So I think for us, really the key thing that he can commit to is this mechanism on just transition.
The other
yeah.
was who attends for Canada?
Yeah, who attends for Canada? Well, I mean, for the government of Canada, it's a team of negotiators. And then a lot of civil society members of Climate Action Network Canada, a lot of business people, including sometimes from the oil and gas industry. But Canada is one of the countries that has the most kind of Canadian presence on the ground. So it's a wide diversity of people that are there.
Okay, Letitia?
Thanks. Merci, Caroline. Ma première question, c'est au sujet de l'entente que Carney avait réussi à établir à Glasgow avec les banquiers, les institutions financières, like the commitment to, zero emissions or climate sustainability financing. And then all the banks have pulled out of that. How has all those people pulling out of that agreement affected his decision making and his plans for climate action?
Sherry, do you want to ask as well?
I have another question too. Sorry. I wanted to also ask about how we can be involved in the united call for an urgent reform of the UN climate talks. I put a link to that in the chat if people are interested. SCAN Ottawa has signed on to it. I don't know if any other SCAN chapters have signed on.
Okay, Sherry, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. I'm wondering what you're hearing about the plan that President Claudia Sheinbaum is going to COP30 with. I know there's amongst Latin American activists, there's some excitement about that.
Okay, Carol? Carol?
Yeah, so it's I think that that's something I've heard actually, that for Prime Minister Carney to see how much the financial sector has deserted climate efforts is probably kind of contributing to his read of the moment we're in economically. Yeah, is maybe what I'll say here, because GFANZ has kind of fully disbanded at this point, the Global Financial Alliance for Net Zero.
Right.
In terms of this ask for reform, that's a reform that is endorsed and pushed by Climate Action Network Canada. Climate Action Network International, which Canada is a part of. And so, I mean, I think like signing on to those statements is how you can support. But really what I think, folks who are back home when many of us are at COP can do most helpfully is kind of help us connect the dots and make noise and ramp up the expectation on Canada, right? We'll be providing opportunities for members to do that. And yeah, we look forward for all of you to join in.
Okay, Anne. You're on mute.
I'm on mute. I'm getting off.
There you go.
So I'm just going to throw out again my idea of, okay, my idea that I've been floating for a couple of months now, and I've got no take up from the national or part of the Council of Canadians. So I'm throwing it out again, and I'm throwing it out here. Although I do know some chapters are interested. That's my intro. And that is to make a personal appeal in some way to Prime Minister Carney from the grassroots of people who are concerned about climate action in Canada, and use the book that he wrote and underline the sections where he talks about climate and ask him, how does this fit with what you're doing at the moment, and what have you got in mind, and here's why we care. And I know the last time I raised it in this group, I think it was you, Dave, who said, you know, Minister Debrusen, or maybe it wasn't. Was it you? And that it would make most sense for us to go first to her. So we've talked about it a little bit in our core group, and we thought that if we could stage it properly with a number of partners, that that we could go to her and ask her to deliver this book to the Prime Minister for us, while also having a conversation with her about what her plans are to push climate action forward in Canada. So I'm just making the pitch again. If anybody's interested, if anybody finds this idea interesting, we will be raising it at our regular Kitchissippi Ottawa Valley chapter of the Council of Canadians Climate Matters Group meeting tomorrow night, and see if how many people in our chapter are or if other people in our chapter, guys are very small core group, think that it's a good idea. And we know that there are at least two other chapters of the council where people are interested. So, but obviously that's not a swell up. That's not an upswelling of grassroots concern. So anyway, I'm just throwing it out there, and I'm curious, Carol, what you think about something like that. And I'll just say one more thing, which is that I have the idea that Carney is strictly a big picture person at the moment, and that he, in a lot of ways, he's not looking at the close-up or the small pictures. And we know that he gets lobbied all the time by big characters, big forces. So it's kind of trying to bring to his attention that, you know, the whole saying of think globally, but act locally, Prime Minister. That's it. So I'm curious what you think, Carol.
Thanks, Anne. Let's go to Karen, and I'll take the two questions at the same time.
Karen, you're on mute.
Oh, I turned it off and there it went again. Sorry.
Okay, now you're back.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn, so much for being here. Really interesting to hear you talk. I wondered whether or not we could frame our approach to Mr. Carney more effectively in market or economic terms. We're not alone, as I finished off Ember's report, which has made such has been so prominent the last while in terms of countries that are backsliding or appear to be backsliding. We're along with Europe to some extent, and certainly the US. So there's a lot of that we're facing, but I think to get to Carney, we do have to think about how we frame the issues. I think Anne is right, in personal terms can make a difference with politicians, but also his interest obviously is in trying to bring together both climate and sort of bring it together with all of the countries. So he's got a lot of considerations to take into account. But they did have a platform that I think we need to hold them accountable to as well. So that was basically my comment is, can we frame things more effectively in economic terms?
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that, Karen. So just to go to Anne, so I don't think Minister De Bruzen would deliver said book. I think from her comments so far, she's pretty aligned on where the Prime Minister is, which, you know, at this stage is not entirely a good thing, unfortunately. So yeah, but I really do hear you on kind of highlighting the passages of his book. I think like I've seen folks do that in some really helpful ways. And yeah, I think that's a good tactic overall. Karen, yeah, I framing things in an economic way, which in some ways builds on what Anne was saying, right? Using Mark Carney's own kind of line of argumentation to remind him of what he needs to do now that he's at the head of our country. I totally agree. In fact, I went to the House of Commons Environment Committee 2 weeks ago, and that's pretty much what I did. Where I said I want to talk about competitiveness and talk about where the global economy is going and where that leaves Canada. So I think that a lot of folks are doing that. Where we're going to see a bit of a misalignment with him is in terms of, how he sees the future of oil and gas. Um, in that. I think he sees electrified LNG and bitumen from the tar sands with CCUS as places where we actually have a competitive advantage, which is unfortunate. I think we want him to really look at renewable energy storage, transmission as places where we could invest. Same thing for energy efficiency and the whole manufacturing of supplies that we could do there. So maybe I'll stop here. I can take one last question, Nick, because
Well, you missed a question about the plan from Mexico.
I did. I answered it in the chat. Sherry, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I do not know.
Okay.
You may know more than me. Yeah.
Okay, last question to Nick quickly.
I don't want to keep you, Carolyn, if it's, I know it's difficult for you getting, so I'll drop my question.
Okay. Louise, do you want to wrap up?
I do. I just want to say thanks so much, Caro. We are ready to play and serve. So we will pay attention to the report at the end of the month in terms of our asks on Canada. And we do have a list of almost 5,000 folks that we can get engaged in terms of letter writing and so on. You're speaking to the organizers tonight, but we have a much bigger subscriber list. So we really do want to be there to put some pressure on the Prime Minister in an international setting. So we think this is a very good avenue, and it's a whole new crew that votes that we can bring to bear here. So we really appreciate it. Please go rest.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Really
so much,
appreciate this conversation and all that you do. I'm grateful for you all. And wish you a great meeting. I sense that we will be in touch and that you will join us with enthusiasm as in our COP efforts. So I'll just stop here and be in touch. Talk soon. Bye. Thanks all.
Thanks so much. Okay. Now, the weekend of September 20th. It was amazing. So congratulations to everybody for pulling off so many successful events. There were events large and small right across the country that brought together over 16,000 folks from an amazing diverse range of age and interests. I'm so proud to be part of a dedicated group of seniors. Last week, a comment was made at a meeting of advocates that resonated. He said, our retirement plans include more than pickleball. We can do more than one thing at a time. We can chew gum and walk too, with our time, especially working for a better future. So let's continue to reach out to other seniors and convince them to get involved and help us to be an even larger voice going forward. And Dave is going to talk about the evaluations that came in. And then Christine is going to give us she did some comparisons on the media. So we'll start with Dave.
Why, thank you, Pat. And Come on. Open up. There we go. So one of the things, an advantage to doing what I do is I get to see a lot of the photos that come in and the videos and stuff like that. And so these are my choices. I've tried to take one photo from every location that we had that was participating this year and include it in this little show. And one of the things I'd like you to look for as we go through it is how many pictures there are of people smiling. They really, really get some enjoyment out of doing this stuff because it's showing that we're doing some action and we're with like-minded people. So it's something I think really makes a difference. Okay, so I love this drone shot of the sign that was done in Ottawa down in the bottom here. Drones are just so incredible, the different view that they have of the world. Okay, so here's the evaluation results. We had 72 locations in Canada with events. 19 of those locations attended events in other locations. So there were 38 locations on the Draw the Line map, and I've since heard that there was 40. So the total number that was active between Seniors for Climate and Draw the Line was 107 locations, or 109 if you say that there were 74 Draw the Line. We had 40 evaluations submitted for Seniors for Climate. 25 locations submitted photos, but we also got photos from social media and some from Draw the Line as well. And we had 4 locations that submitted subscriber lists. And I hope to hear that there's more of those coming because that boosts the number of people on our subscriber list, and that is a good thing. So our estimated total attendance, and this is just for Seniors for Climate locations, was just over 16,000 people. Broken down kind of this way, between 1 and 50, all the way up to 2,000 to 4,000 with 3 locations. And so I've not heard a specific number from Draw the Line other than tens of thousands. But based on the audience figures that people have submitted, this is what we feel is probably pretty close, 16,000. So the average number of volunteers was 11. The lowest number was 1, and the highest number of volunteers was 20 plus, which is fantastic. And you know, it'd be nice if we could loan some of the that single person who was doing all the volunteering some help along the way. We had an issue with our October 1st about date flexibility, and people asked for us to be more flexible. So certainly Seniors for Climate was more flexible with having a date around this time to be able to help to get an age diverse audience. 21 locations said yes, it did help. 3 said no, it didn't, and 16 were, I guess, on the fence. So media, there were 179 stories so far that covered international, national, regional, and local. And in answer to the question, did your event get media coverage? 25 locations said yes, 13 said no, and 2 were on the fence. So this is just straight numbers. I'm a numbers person, but I think you're going to hear from Christine more interpretation of these results, which is more insightful. But this is just a breakdown both by province of where the story originated, as well as the date that it was written on. So on the right-hand side where it says before 25, 09-15. Those were any stories that were written before that date. So the highlighted September the 20th was 67 stories. I'm not sure if Christine's going to cover this, but there was a Canadian Press wire story. And out of the 67 stories there, that Canadian Press wire story was used in 50 of them. Mm-hmm. So they basically took it. Some of them just reprinted the original story. Some of them added a little bit of localization. But 50 out of the 67 stories on September the 20th originated from that one article. In terms of what went well, and I know it says themes, but when you're trying to, when every location has written, like a paragraph or some sentences about what they thought went well, it's hard to count the numbers. And so this is where interpretation comes in, and thus we have themes. So the top one was the program. People thought that the speakers, the music, and the food they had was something that really went well. A march or parade was also mentioned very significantly. The postcards seemed to be really well liked right across the country. People thought that they had really good signs and banners. The interactions with other groups was a positive. Community engagement was a positive. And either the organization or the process of organizing, pardon me, was seen as something that went well. And what would you change next time? So some people said a wider range of people. So average people, youth, seniors, families, more Indigenous people, and local clubs. More coordination with other local groups. More focus on climate. Clear expectations for all groups. And that needs a word of explanation that there were evidently some groups that volunteered, but then they ultimately didn't stay the course. And so that left the people that were remaining kind of in the lurch. And that speaks to the next line down, which is a firmer commitment from all volunteers. And people are looking for more media interest and material to hand out as well. How successful was your event, where 1 is low and 10 is high? So that's the layout there. Kind of bunching up around the 7 or 8 rating mark, with some a little bit lower and the number higher. And how would you raise the rating? So people thought that getting more and diverse attendees would raise their rating. More media interest would raise their rating. And having a stronger climate focus would raise their rating as well. Were there any politicians at your event? 22 said yes, 14 said no, and 4 were on the fence. And what level of government was represented? So there was one federal representative, which I thought was, wow, where are they? 9 territorial or provincial representatives, 1 regional, and 13 municipal. And that is actually quite comparable. We seem to be seeing a lot more municipal politicians showing up at our events than any other level. What wouldn't you change from national support? And so it kind of echoed back. Don't change the support you provide. Okay, so keep on doing what you're already doing. People really enjoyed the monetary support. They enjoyed or valued the advice that we gave and the online resources as well. And what do they want changed is more media coverage. Question was, what was your experience of working, pardon me, Withdraw the line and other coalition groups. What did you consider the advantages? So people saw having a common or united front as an advantage, having younger and skilled people, having resources and money available to them, the promotion that was done, the fact that more people attended, and the political messaging. And what disadvantages did you see? So people felt that the concentration on Palestine, that the climate message got muted, and the flip side of what we saw on the advantages, some groups thought it was too political, and it drove some people away. Some groups saw it as time-consuming to gain the trust and accommodate different ideas and agendas and ways the groups work together. The addition of the coalition groups did not always increase the number of organizers. And the Draw the Line national group was inflexible on event dates. So this goes to the fact that I think there were 4 Seniors for Climate locations that did not get on the Draw the Line map because their event was not on September the 20th. And local issues got lost in national messaging. So people want a greater emphasis on some of their local issues as well. And that brings us to the end.
Thank you so much, Dave. Yeah,
You're
you did a great job with all the pictures and all the data. Thank you so much. Now, Carolyn has done a bunch of work on the media. Oh, Christine, I'm sorry.
Christine, thanks, Pat.
Sorry, Carol. It's Christine and Carolyn. I'm getting you all mixed up.
All right.
Christine has done a whole lot of work and would like to talk about, you know, sort of comparisons between past events, the media for past events and this event. So take it away, Christine.
Thanks, Pat. And actually, I'm working off a lot of work that Dave did because he was the one who collected all the media examples and all the media hits and gathered them together in a folder in an Excel spreadsheet so that we could actually do a comparison. So thank you, David. I was curious to see how Seniors for Climate and how the issues of climate itself and our messaging would get described in the coverage of the 2 events of our event on October 1st last year, where it was just the SFC alone, and then our event where we were part of a coalition in September. So I looked at just numbers, and I may have this wrong because Dave, you gave some new numbers that I was maybe looking earlier, and I didn't realize that we were up to 179 stories. I was looking at around, I guess, 110 or something. So so there were actually more print articles or more stories for September 20th than in overall than there were October 1st. So October 1st was about 120, and Dave just gave us the number of 179. Now, as you would expect, the vast majority of the articles for both days were local or regional. I think it's fair to say that September 20th was, no, October 1st, so I got to get it right, there were probably more, we had less national mentions, and it was more local and regional. But either way, kudos to organizers, because it's your outreach to your local media that is generating those articles. So that's the vast majority of the articles that we're seeing. While the October 1st coverage was, naturally consistently covered Seniors for Climate, our climate messaging, I think we were pretty comfortable with how well that messaging was used. But local articles for September 20th were much more varied. Some mentioned draw the line and the range of DTL demands. A few mentioned Seniors for Climate by name, some didn't, some did. Some had a strong focus on a local climate issue. So it was broader. But overall, I didn't read every one, but overall, when I just sort of scanned through the September 20th articles, I found that even when the focus was on DTL and the coalition, climate almost always came first, or some mention of climate was the first mention in the lead of the article. And just ballparking them, I felt that that the climate issue in general got the most ink overall. So if you just sort of look through these articles, while all the other DTL focuses, migrant workers, Indigenous rights, they were all included, or sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't, but they were often framed through a climate justice lens. So I felt like climate was really was being covered. The big difference, and David mentioned this, the big difference between October 1st and September 20th was that for September 20th, we got that Canadian Press piece, and it was lengthy and it was comprehensive. It was focused on DTL events across the country, and it got a lot of pickup, like 50. It was picked up 50 times. So that I think we have to feel was a really good thing, because when you look through the piece, while it doesn't use Seniors for Climate language or messaging, it hits on all of our messages in throughout the article. Climate is woven all the way through. It touches on the situation. It touches on what's happening currently with government and where the climate issue is there. So it was quite current. David Suzuki is quoted, and unfortunately he doesn't mention us, but he touches on of course all the issues that we would want him to touch on. And again, I think climate in that particular article got the most ink. Our messaging was included, and I think it made a difference. That piece was also picked up more nationally. It was in the Globe and Mail. I think it ran in some larger regional newspapers. I think it might have served it as the basis for the national CTV news piece as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So after reviewing the media, which was basically scanning a bunch of articles, I felt that SFC's climate messaging was well reflected in the September 20th coverage. In terms of the coverage of Seniors for Climate itself, that happened in local media, but not national. But SFC wasn't alone in that. Most DTL partners weren't mentioned by name. And finally, in some communities, SFC organizers felt that and this came up in what David had to say, felt that their message was overshadowed by more vocal coalition partners, in particular, the pro-Palestinian groups. However, the local and national media coverage was quite even-handed and didn't reflect that. So the bottom line for me was, with all the hard work that went into this, the input and the messaging that Seniors for Climate shared with DTL, I think a wide range of climate issues and concerns were given a prime spot in the September 20th media coverage. So,
Thank you so much, Christine. Yeah, a lot of work looking through all that stuff. We appreciate comparison. Nick, you were going to just talk about how we worked with DTL?
Yes, and how much time are we at? What's the time?
Yeah, well, Michael, if you could keep it to 5 minutes, that would be helpful, but see how
And
it
then-
goes.
Okay, and then discussion afterwards, right?
Yes.
So, okay. Just a few things. One is that, this particular, I'm going to turn myself off spotlight. Okay. This particular demonstration was different than the two previous ones because we joined a coalition that we actually didn't define ourselves. And that's quite a difference. And so looking at our experience in that context is important. It was very interesting hearing Christine's analysis there. I hadn't heard that before, and I thought that was quite interesting. To remind us of what happened. So we were approached by 350 in May, I think, certainly early on, based on an international call for global demonstrations, which were primarily focused on climate and linking other struggles to it, in particular fights around authoritarianism and democracy, support for Indigenous people. And so we joined that coalition at that point. There was a change in the definition. And so we went through a period of time of trying to adjust to that change in definition in Canada, not so much internationally. One of the first discussions was around some of the language that was being used, which was quite inaccessible to the majority of people. So we got some of that was changed based on discussion. We ran into a problem of eligibility of seniors for climate events to be considered by the Draw the Line Coalition as as part of it or not. And we resolved that through a number of discussions where the resolution was that as long as people understood the importance or agreed to the idea of working with other groups and trying to get some common understanding, they would focusing on climate alone in any particular location would be acceptable within the Draw the Line framework. And that was important because we were kind of divided over which way people would go and how we would, as the different locations would deal with things. And I think that resolved that. And then, of course, the organizing really picked up in the last while. And the number of groups we gained in the last while was quite strong. And we came out, with all this stuff that you've just heard. And so our discussions we had in the steering committee after that was to now focus on moving ahead and continue to at least see where the Draw the Line was at before we responded to how we would deal with that. And so you'll hear after this some discussion about what the next events will be and where we might be going, we're proposing we go. We attended the Draw the Line coordination team meeting, which did a summary of where the different groups are at. And so just to give you a sense of that meeting, there were 5 climate groups, 1 anti-war group, 1 migrants' rights network, and 1 Council of Canadians. So in other words, there were 5 climate groups and anti-war group, migrant group, and Council of Canadians. So a number of the groups that had been part of it in coordinating across the country were not, for one reason or another, did not attend that meeting. Almost universally, the feeling was of the various groups, they didn't quite know what they could offer in terms of things moving ahead, either because of resources. So 350, for example, has issues around, as I understood it, around funding and how much they can fund. Some of the key people were stepping back. Climate Action Network was, examining what it had available and how it could proceed. And the Migrant Rights Network were still examining how they would approach it. So what came out of that meeting was that some people within that group will meet apparently to focus on the budget and in the response to that, but there wasn't a clear direction which it may or may not emerge for the coalition across the country. And then I think in each your experience was different locations, different responses in terms of follow-up. So each location has had, one type of follow-up or another. And, one of the questions then for us is, first of all, what do we learn out of it? And another question I think we should pose, how can we continue or what, work with the groups that we're involved in, and then what does the experience teach us? And so I guess we need some feedback from people regarding how they feel about the whole thing. I think the presentation we just heard is very significant in that the number of locations we had, kind of report there was on climate, etc. But clearly there were issues that we had in terms of, deciding what we were doing and how it fit into our plan for where we're going forward. And I think that unless somebody else wants to speak to that, but that's sort of how I would summarize where we're at. But we need to know from you any thoughts you have and your concerns and issues, if there's time for discussion.
Thank you, Nick. And yes, there is time for like 5 minutes or so because I promise this is an hour and a half. So Letitia, go ahead with your question.
It's not a question so much as a comment about how things started off in Ottawa and what it's like for a local organization that's been doing something traditionally through Fridays for Future Ottawa, totally based on climate, and then having a national organization kind of swoop in and basically boss us around. It was a little insensitive. And if we ever did something again, I would expect a little more respect for the local organizers and how they had done things in the past, and more professional behavior on the part of national paid staff.
Thank you, Letitia. We've heard those kind of comments before. Lori?
Thank you very much. This was a really great review and lots of data. I quite liked the coalition, and we made contacts with other groups, which will keep on going because we have common connection, and everything is climate. Everything is climate, and that was what we talked about at our event. I found the toolkit from 350 invaluable. It was a terrific model, which really helped with organization and media coverage so much, and with planning of times and things. I found it really helpful. We had almost 100 people come out. A lot of them were peace, and that was fine by us because it's all climate. And that's a big issue, and so I think our event here got a lot of positive coverage, and a lot of people came out and stayed right to the end. And I want to thank everybody for all their hard work to organize everything and get everything on the maps and get us all connected and supporting us.
Well, good, Lori. I'm glad you can keep that going. Dave?
There is one other thing that I wanted to mention. So of the 72 groups that we had running, there were a number that were in the same locations as Draw the Line events, but they weren't joined up. And I thought it was really, really cool that I think there were 5 locations where they naturally just merged in together with the Draw the Line event. So, Victoria, for example, had a climate bicycle tour, and then that joined up at noontime with the Draw the Line event. And, like there was support from Seniors for Climate for the Draw the Line event without being asked. Okay. And I understand the same type of thing happened in London. The same type of thing happened in Niagara. And I'm sorry, there's a couple other locations that aren't popping into my mind right now. But I think that's wonderful. And I do have to say that there were some locations that had a really, really positive experience with the Draw the Line thing and want to continue. And I wish them well.
Mm-hmm. Any more comments? Yes, Melissa.
So we were one of the Draw the Line events, and we didn't manage to find anybody to work with from any of the other groups. So we ended up, I mean, it was mostly climate themed, but we did pull in the other themes, even though we didn't work with anybody on those themes. But the one thing that I really appreciated as the organizer was, as was already mentioned, all the resources from 350.org and the drop-in support groups that they had as well. And they actually worked really hard of reaching out through the network to try and find people for us to work with. I just found they were fabulous to work with. I also liked their portal that went out through the 350.org, all of their lists, so that we ended up with a lot of people coming to our rally who came through 350.org through their email list. So it was really cool because we were able to break out of our bubble sort of into theirs. And then we ended up having a lot of people from different groups who did come to attend our rally, which we wouldn't have had if we hadn't been working with them. So I found that super helpful.
Oh, good. Yes, Nick.
So Lori mentioned working with ongoing work with other groups. Is that true for others? I mean, I would like to get some sense of whether some of that's been accomplished.
Tylene?
Hi, yeah. We had an amazing experience in Edmonton. We started off right off the beginning with a coalition. That's what our steering team was. And yeah, we're planning on working together in Edmonton, continuing. We don't know how, but we're continuing to stay in contact. We had a Signal group chat actually, and we learned a lot from each other. And we definitely had more people attend because we had more organizations involved from different areas of the different demands. And also, I think that with having our steering team, like we had relationships at Scan Edmonton already with, say, for example, some Indigenous climate organizations, and they ended up being some of the main leaders because of they had so much extensive experience with marches and rallies, for example. So it ended up being a huge advantage for us in Edmonton. Our only disappointment was the media coverage. We had zero, so that was too bad, but that's kind of beyond our control in some ways. And thank you so much to like the funding we received, all the supports we received from Seniors for Climate and Draw the Line. It was very well supported and lots of educationals available. So thank you.
Okay, Nancy.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we had a couple of discussions, first a discussion in the SCAN group here about whether to endorse the 5 demands of Draw the Line, and ended up voting on it. And we had a near unanimous vote to support the 5 demands, which I thought was an amazing step forward for the group in Kingston, because we have had some discussions in the past where people have been opposed to doing anything beyond climate, or that's not really the way I want to say it. I guess looking at climate activism from a very narrow perspective, rather than a broader sort of climate justice perspective. So we went ahead and we expanded the organizing body and brought in 3 different organizations, including Palestinian organization from there's 3 different Palestinian groups working in Kingston. And the people who came on board with the committee were a huge addition to the work that we did. And I think the contribution that they made was critical in terms of the size of the event that we ended up having, which was about 300 people, which is, 3 times larger than anything we've organized before. We have met and decided to continue as a Draw the Line committee, coalition, whatever, in Kingston. And we do have a member of 350 Canada in Kingston who was part of our organizing here. So that was also invaluable. And I'll echo also what other people said. The resources from 350, the art events, art build events, We used 2 of those. They were very helpful in building, and the resources in terms of the forgotten what they're called. The resources they provided were very helpful, and also the webinar that they did. Some of the speakers, particularly the woman who spoke from A World Beyond War, was really impressive. But the difficulty we're now having is that we have members who have left SCAN because they felt that there was too much, that the climate message was being lost in the other messaging. And they only want to be involved with climate issues, and they didn't know what they were doing or why they were there at this rally. And that has now had a difficult strain on other members who remain. So some really great stuff, and now some really difficult stuff.
Sorry to hear that, you know, about those difficulties. Is there we're really running out of time, folks. Letitia, can you be really quick?
Really quick, yes. Today we had the big teams debrief for the Ottawa event. There were about 23 people that attended that. And although we don't have like a specific event in mind that we're planning together, we do want to continue to work together. We had a really good, honest debrief today, and we looked at some of the weaknesses and things that weren't anticipated, and we know how to deal with them in the future. So that was really encouraging. Council of Canadians is doing something around austerity. They're going to have an anti-austerity campaign starting in mid-November, and that will be across Canada. So I think we should all be on the lookout for that. Here we do have one weak point about working more closely with Indigenous folk, and we do need to work on that. We did have, because of the coalition, we had a lot more support for the Kebawek, who are fighting the mega dump of radioactive waste at Chalk River. So they had a really good turnout, and that's mostly because of the connections, the network that we've built, that we can get a lot more people out and aware of demonstrations to support various issues. So there was a lot of benefit to developing this coalition.
Okay, thank you, Letitia. Susan, quickly, and Anne, I know you've written a comment. Can we leave it at that?
I just want to touch base on our event being very well, a lot more groups, a lot of people, more people than last time, and working with the groups. And when I was emceeing the event, and at the very beginning and throughout the event, I kept noting that how all of these 5 different points that we were bringing up all tied in with climate, how we could tie it in with climate, with the healthcare and the fires and all of those things, you know, trying to bring it back as each one could tie in with all those subjects as well through climate. So that worked really well. And we are planning to, we did have our debrief, and I think a lot of people, you know, we want to keep in connection, and we're going to try to support each other's events, go to theirs, and, you know, over the year before we plan our next one. And then hopefully they'll continue, like for our kids, they were our last event in this one, and hopefully will continue next year with us. And some people that were at the event signed up for SCAN, some signed up for SFC. I had 5 people interested. I emailed them. I haven't heard back from them. Maybe you did, but I gave all them the information to them where to find out about it and explain the differences between the two. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, and quickly, and I'm afraid Everett will have to leave it at that, just because.
Sorry, Pat. I only just wanted to say from Letitia's comment that I posted the Council of Canadians anti-austerity petition in the chat. It's already been launched.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I just wanted to say that it was very hard for us to wrap our heads around it, but when we had our major organizing meeting for September 20th, we agreed, those of us in the very core group of our group, we agreed that we were going to present the 5 points in our own language, and have a vote on whether or not people supported them. And it was unanimous, the support. And also, what happened as a result of that is that our group split into 2 events. And 5 people decided that they were going to go down to Ottawa and join the Big Draw the Line movement, wearing our T-shirts that said Upper Ottawa Valley. And 30 people came out in Eganville to do, which is in the center of our county, to do a whole bunch of different activities that we worked on together. So it was kind of interesting, but it took a few steps past where we'd ever been before, and that was good for us.
Well, good. Thank you. Now we're going to have trouble meeting our deadline for this meeting. So, Dave, you've got a couple of minutes here to introduce what we're thinking about for 2026.
Yeah. So we discussed in a previous meeting the idea of doing something during Canadian Environmental Week next year, which is the first week of June. And it also happens to be Seniors' Day or week in a number of different provinces and territories. So there seemed to be some enthusiasm for that. So in a little bit of further discussion, we're wondering if the fact that it's at the beginning of June, and then probably our fall event is only 4 months after that, especially through the summer, if it would be too much to take on. So we are discussing the idea of tying in with other networks. So there's, for example, on the West Coast, there's the West Coast Climate Action Network. In Ontario, there's OCEC. There's Climate Atlantic in, pardon me, the East Coast. There are nature networks, etc., that we might tie in and see if they would like to do something together to kind of share the load for June. So that's what we're looking for, some feedback from you. One of the things I heard today on the radio, and I thought, hey, that's a great idea. Doing a fundraiser, people had a 5K walk for one of their local charities, and they were able to get enough money to, and I thought, hey, I've never heard of a climate 5K walk. Maybe we should try something like that. But let me focus. Do you like the idea of drawing in other networks to focus on the June event?
Okay, so that's the question. Any feedback? And that certainly in Winnipeg is going to be other climate groups. There's certainly lots of them in the groups and organizations that work on climate. And we're going to pull those together for the spring. Nick.
So some of the thinking was also that in organizing for June, we organizing for the fall at the same time. We have to talk a bit more about what that might mean so that you're not finishing in June, then trying to decide again what you're doing in the fall, that it would be a plan for the whole year. And so the Environment Week followed with an action in the fall, more details to follow.
Liba?
Well, the idea of organizing 2 events with other people or without other people, that nearly killed me last year. I don't know about other people, but organizing 2 events in the same year is really hard.
Okay. Brian?
I would say in Calgary, I just made a list this morning. There are 13 organizations that are focused on climate, and seems to me that working together with them makes a lot of sense. And I should say that I, for one, favor collaborating with climate-related organizations. especially Indigenous organizations.
And what about 2 events?
Yes, I think there should be 2 events. And collaborating on the first one makes a lot of sense. In fact, collaborating on both of them makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay. Lisa?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Brian was just saying there. It makes sense to me for the spring event, to have that a collaborative group, everyone at the table kind of event, and then maybe make the October event, since that is around National Seniors Day, maybe make that just a Seniors for Climate and really focus on the seniors aspect of it in October, and use it as a recruiting day as well, right? Get more seniors on board by really focusing on seniors. So just my 2 cents.
Anne, did you have a comment, or is your hand from before? Nope. Okay. Well, give it some more thought and certainly send us feedback. We're sort of wrestling with what we're going to do, and feedback would be really helpful. Okay, Rolly.
I'll be a very quick Pat. I'm going to cut down what I was going to talk about. I just want to talk a little bit about our fall program. As we all know, we had 2 major events this year, and April, of course, and just this past September. But we do have a fall program. It's a very light, low lift action program. Starting tomorrow, you will receive an e-blast that will be one every 2 weeks until the end of November, the beginning of December. And each e-blast will have an action point or an action item. For example, tomorrow, folks will be asked to register for a workshop we're going to be having next week on how to lobby. We're going to train folks on how to lobby their member of parliament. And the second ask in that e-blast tomorrow will be to send a letter to the Prime Minister or the Cabinet Minister regarding the climate situation or the political moment we find ourselves in. So that'll be e-blasts. We will have a couple of several workshops as well. And one of them is going to be held next week. And I was going to talk a little bit about that. But basically what we're going to do is train volunteers to prepare for lobbying their member of parliament. This is one of the things that came out in the survey. I think that I'm not sure if Dave mentioned that a while ago, but it did come out in the survey as I think it was number 3 in priorities. And we're going to be using the Citizens Climate Lobby model. We've been given permission to use their resources. Dylan and I are going to write the program. We're going to deliver it next week. And I'm going to share right after this, I'm going to share the link. You can register for it right now. So I wish I could talk about it more, but basically, once you've had that workshop, you'll be prepared to approach your member of parliament. You'll have a phone script, an email script, how to prepare the questions that you might want to use going in. And also a leave behind document. This is a document you leave at the end of the lobbying session. So we'll have all that for you. And I'm going to share the link, and I'm not going to take any more time than that right now. Please register in large numbers for this workshop. I think it's a door opener for us to exert, a low lift pressure on our members of parliament. And that's part of our fall program. The other part of the program is a social media blitzing this fall. So again, e-blast, social media, and workshops, training workshops, primarily focused on lobbying, but there may be others as well around COP30. And that's all the time I'm going to take, Pat.
Yes, thank you, Rolly. And those invites are going to our full list of almost 5,000 people.
Indeed.
So.
And one of the purposes of all of this is to keep people engaged, obviously. Folks are tired, they don't want to do anything very, very heavy lifting right now, but it'll keep us engaged until we re-energize and start again next year in 2026. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Nick, we have an appeal for volunteers.
Okay, so most of you will have had contact with one of our organizers. That was Linda Curtin, Barb Linz, David Smith. Been in touch with you to help you, provide support, encourage participation, make connections with, answer your questions, etc. That group of people is really critical in terms of developing the work of our group here, Seniors for Climate, and they play an extremely valuable role. Barb Linz is, stepping back, and so we need some more people. We need more people, even if Barb wasn't stepping back. But I'm encouraging and hoping that either one of you or people you know might be interested in being part of that organizing group. And being part of the organizing group means you're in touch with a group of people in a specific area of the country. You check what's happening with them. You find ways to maybe.
At least on my screen are frozen. So do you want to repeat that, Nick? Because
Oh,
you were
yeah.
frozen.
Starting when?
No,
Right, the whole thing or
it
what?
was not frozen. It was not frozen for us.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Good
so
here,
it
Pat.
was just me.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, so anyway, if you're interested, please let me know or let Dave Smith know. Probably you've got his email address. Admin would be the right address, admin@seniorsforclimate.org. And or if you know someone who is an organizer or likes to do this kind of thing, is looking for some ways of being active, please encourage them to get in touch with us so we can add to that group. Thanks.
Okay. And Dave, we'll give you 2 minutes
Well, I'm going to take.
to talk about
I'm going
survey.
to take one. So the Seniors for Climate National Survey is out. It concludes tonight. To date, we have 555 responses, and I'm told that's roughly 12% of our subscribers have responded. And we are going to combine that with the results that we did. We did a pilot in Saskatchewan in June. So we excluded Saskatchewan from the national survey this time. So we're going to include the Saskatchewan responses as well. And the next time we meet, you'll hear about the results. How's that, Pat?
Good. Well, I kept you 4 minutes over. So we will have an after chat for anyone who would like to stay and has some questions they didn't get answered. But other than that, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the work you're doing and keep up the good work.